Hi, my name is Sandy and I will be talking about ADHD and stimulant drugs. ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a neurodevelopmental disorder that is most commonly diagnosed in children but often lasts well into adulthood. Symptoms of ADHD includes impulsivity, hyperactivity, and inattentiveness, which can lead to difficulties in school, work, and social settings. About 9.4% of children in the US have been diagnosed with ADHD, which equates to about 6 million kids. In adults, about 4.4% have been diagnosed. Those with ADHD also often have other co-occurring disorders, such as depression and anxiety. This is an important topic because ADHD is actually one of the most undiagnosed conditions in adults, especially in women. There are also a lot of misconceptions about ADHD, one of them being the idea that it's not a real condition. This narrative creates an enormous stigma for those diagnosed or seeking diagnosis. Taking medication adds to the stigma due to the influx of mostly college students who misuse ADHD medication for perceived academic enhancement. However, taking medication when not prescribed by a doctor is very dangerous. So what exactly are these ADHD medications and what do they do? They are classified under stimulants, which means they increase central nervous system activity in your brain. Essentially, people with ADHD have a chemical imbalance where they're lacking in dopamine and norepinephrine neurotransmitters. These play key roles in motivation and cognitive function. There are two types of stimulants for ADHD, amphetamines and methylphenidate. Both inhibit the reuptake of these neurotransmitters, which increases the amount in the synaptic cleft where they're needed. Amphetamines will be the focus for the rest of this presentation. Now let's take a look at the history timeline. Although discovered 17 years earlier, racemic amphetamine wasn't synthesized until 1927. When it hit the market in 1935, it was trademarked as Benzedrine to treat narcolepsy and mild depression. 2 years later was the first report of positive benefits for children with behavioral issues, now known as ADHD. In the 1940s, during World War II, it was widely used by soldiers to counteract combat fatigue and to increase their alertness. After the war, there was a surplus of this drug, essentially creating America's first amphetamine epidemic, and thus became a Schedule II drug per the FDA in 1970. Here is a list of various chemical and physical properties of amphetamine. This image on the right is its chemical structure, where you can clearly see the primary amine and phenol functional groups. Its formula is C9H13N, and its brand name is something I believe everyone knows, Adderall. It has one chiral center and one pair of enantiomeric structures. Adderall is typically a 3-to-1 mixture of its isomers with more of the dextroamphetamine since it's more potent. This is one way you could synthesize amphetamine, and I chose the Gabriel synthesis in particular because we're all familiar with it and its mechanisms. So there are 3 steps in this synthesis, the first being the deprotonation of phthalimide to create potassium phthalimide, with hydroxide being the base for this reaction. The second step is a nucleophilic attack where the potassium phthalimide attacks an alkyl halide via an SN2 process. Lastly, the product from step 2 is treated with hydrazine, which releases the primary amine compound after 2 nucleophilic acyl substitution reactions, thus creating amphetamine. This here shows the different metabolic pathways that amphetamine takes when metabolized in the liver. It undergoes aliphatic hydroxylation, aromatic hydroxylation, and dealkylation, producing the metabolites shown in the image. Lastly, there are several chemical bench tests that can be used to help determine the presence of amphetamines. The nitrous acid test is used to distinguish between primary, secondary, and tertiary amines, as well as aromatic and aliphatic amines. Amphetamine is a primary aliphatic amine, and so it will start to bubble at low temperatures when this test is administered due to a release of nitrogen gas. The Marquis reagent test is a color spot test that can specifically test for amphetamine, though it was originally used to test for opiates. When administered, amphetamines will turn a yellowish orange color. These next slides are my references. Thank you so much for watching.